But we wanted to save some time for a part of our project that's entering a new phase as of this Thursday,
Yeah.
which is the release of our dichototies. For
Mm-hmm.
those of you that don't remember or haven't heard of them before, dichototies are this idea that we have for our clothing where we do screen printing of phrases that are very similarly worded but arranged in such a way that they have very different meanings.
Mm-hmm.
So our first one, which was in the spring, which we didn't get to roll out because of COVID, was "You are not your thoughts" versus "All we are is thought."
Yes.
And then in the summer, we actually didn't do one in favor of having our unreported shirts,
Mm-hmm.
which is part of our use of force series that's ongoing about different instances of police use of force in various spots along our walk routes. And now we have the fall version, which is "The community is endless"
Mm-hmm.
versus "A community of edges."
That's right.
And so we've had sweatshirts. Jesse and I have had sweatshirts
Yeah.
that we've made that we've been wearing as we've been walking around.
Mm-hmm.
And it was always a plan to have events, which obviously is not part of the COVID plan, and
No.
then sell T-shirts or printings of these dichototies at the events. And so now we're finally ready to figure out basically a distribution rollout strategy. And so, yeah, now that I've just kind of given all the preamble in the world, do you want to talk a little bit about?
Yeah. So we have this stock of t-shirts that we bought 5 years ago for a different project from a company called Alternative Apparel, which is a US based company. And we pulled out 2 colorways from that box of shirts that we have, and we've put them aside for this particular run of dichototies. And we've chosen colors that we think will look nice on those, but we haven't actually printed them yet. So the way that it'll work is that I've done some Photoshop mock-ups of what they would look like printed, and then people can choose their color and choose their size and then order it, and then we'll print it. And so the reason for that is to keep everything low waste and only put the printing work into the pieces that are actually printed, and it makes it like an edition. So it'll be the first edition of these 2 styles, and it's just a limited number of shirts, and then it's a first come first serve situation. And we'll probably do a second edition at some point too, but this is the first one. And then in addition to that addition, we have something called Highly Valued,
Mm-hmm.
which is a repeat of Mike's sweatshirt that he wears once a week in the fall. And it's also from Alternative Apparel, but we only have 3 of that exact sweatshirt. And those I actually did print already because they're very specific. And then we also have one item, which is called Highly Vintage. And that is a repeat of the sweatshirt that I wear, which is a vintage sweatshirt that we got while we were doing our shopping for our uniforms. And I knew the color sweatshirt that I wanted for my uniform, and I got this one, and then I got another one in case I messed it up. And so I didn't mess it up, and so we have one Highly Vintage sweatshirt available.
Yes. You can see we really like playing with words. So highly valued, highly vintage.
Yeah.
We're going to be seeing if those things stick, if people like them. But the basic idea is with the highly valued stuff, these are things that are never going to be made again.
Mm-hmm.
we have a certain amount of them. With the Highley Vintage, it's taking clothes that already exist that we've purchased and applying our mark on them. And we're going to be displaying very transparently how much everything costs. That's a really important thing for us. Because it's not just about making the clothes. I mean, if that's not already apparent, because we are going to be, for the foreseeable future, making them to order.
Yeah.
Not just making extra things and then having there being waste. We also think that it's important and want to make our work be representative to people of what it takes to actually make clothes. I was in Jamaica, Queens this week, and it almost feels like a confessional, but
Yeah,
I had
go
to
ahead.
buy a scarf because I was sick, as I mentioned earlier, and I thought it was going to rain all day, so I didn't bring a scarf. But then, of course, the rain immediately stopped, and I could feel my throat getting battered by the wind. So I went into a Rainbow and bought a pashmina scarf for $7. And the pashmina scarf was, by the end of the day, already pilling on my hat. So, we all
Probably
want,
not the best quality.
yeah,
Yeah.
we all want these things. They have shirts there on the Rainbow, or like out on the sidewalk, they'll be like $1.99 for a shirt. There is no way that was made in a responsible manner.
Yeah.
And what we want to do with this, the dichotomies, and with any of the clothing that we're going to be moving forward with in the future, is show how much things cost, so that even if people don't buy these shirts, they start getting an understanding of what costs actually are.
Yeah.
I think it's our concept behind it is that it's compelling and educational, even if it doesn't necessarily result in people purchasing things. So.
Yeah, I mean it's very important to me and it's very important to you, and it's how we've decided to clothe ourselves for this entire year. Every single item of clothing, which if you've been on our website you can also see, is labeled next to it where we got it and on what tier of our value system with clothing it falls. And yeah, it's not impossible to do that. It takes a little more work to kind of take the effort to think about where your clothing is coming from, but it takes some knowledge, so we can be conveyors of that knowledge.
Yeah.
And part of also why I want to show the breakdown is because certain things like we want to get all of our materials from reasonable places. We don't want to be just ordering bulk shirts from China or something where, all of the clothing is either vintage or made in the US. And actually, the newer stuff that we're getting is made not only in the US, but locally in between Pennsylvania and Long Island, which is funny because that's where we're from.
Mm-hmm.
And
It's where we were made.
Yeah, well, I was going to say that, but I actually was born in New Jersey. Anyway, and you were born in Brooklyn.
That's true, but that's on Long Island.
That's true.
And it's where you were assembled.
Oh, yeah, like my brain growing and stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
whatever. But that's where the shirts, the newer shirts. So first edition number 2 will be from Royal Apparel instead of Alternative Apparel.
Yeah.
But anyway, some of the costs end up being a little bit more than they would be if you were just going for the cheapest available option. And then our labor is what it is. And yeah, I hope it's interesting for people. It's very interesting for me. I really love talking about it and showing it. And I hope that it's something that people are interested in looking at.
Yeah. Well, circling back to the scarf, I mean, the tier structure that we have for our clothing start, it goes as high as reuse and things that we've already had. And then at the bottom is functional necessity, right, which includes the shoes. And in this particular instance, it's in order for me to maintain health so that we can continue walking, I needed to
Sure.
purchase this scarf for the
Yeah.
time. But how this relates to what we're doing here is that, we also recognize that, we're not militantly into what we're doing. That is to say, like, there are certain classes of people that are puritanical in whatever their beliefs are. And ultimately, I'm less about trying to get people to make it so that every piece of their clothing is at that top tier of reuse, or like union made. The name of the person that stitched the sleeve onto your shirt,
Yeah.
but more about, like, if you're just thinking about this, then you will naturally start, organizing things based on, it's like, well, I need this functionally. I need this right now, and that's just where it is. And I am going to bring this type of decision making to every clothing purchase.
Yeah. And it can go beyond clothing too. I mean,
Well, sure.
once you start thinking about things in this way, you apply it to kitchen goods and beauty products and whatever else you buy. Like every single thing that you buy, these metrics can be applied to. And then, it also can be a challenging thing to start doing as well, because it takes time to sort of research where things are coming from. It takes a certain level of financial ability to not simply just choose the cheapest thing. But I also think it has the potential to curtail on unnecessary spending at the same time. Because if you're just going to Rainbow, for example, to do like a fun shopping trip, you might just like not do that. Where you might go and you might spend $25 and get a whole bag of stuff that you may or may not need or want. You might not do that, and then you might have an extra $25 to spend on something that makes you feel good and makes other people feel good and is, contributing to.
Or you go to a Salvation Army and have a fun time,
Sure. Where things are
purchasing
actually
things that,
probably about the same price.
yeah.
And yeah,
I mean, there's plenty of ways to look at it.
yeah,
And
there
I
are.
mean, if people are able to extrapolate this clothing tier structure to other parts of their life, awesome.
Yeah.
I find it hard to extrapolate this to everything because it's, we're just humans,
Yeah. Oh,
But
and I think, yeah, I mean, there's no pressure. I'm really into it, and I've also been into it for uh like 15 years, like since I was a teenager. So I have a leg up on this. So if you're just starting out, if this is your first introduction, welcome. No pressure to make this your whole entire life.
yeah. So that covers our thinking as far as the merchandise itself, but then there's the specific fall dichotomies phrases.
Mm-hmm.
The community is endless and a community of edges. Which one do you want to talk about?
Well, the one on my shirt that I wear every week is a community of edges,
Mm-hmm.
which I go back and forth on feeling like it makes a lot of sense to wear that shirt, and then also feeling like sometimes it doesn't feel like I need to wear that shirt.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of depends on where we are in the political climate, mostly.
Mm-hmm. Our original pairing was actually different. It was the community is endless and this community is ending.
It's true.
And we sat with that for a while and came to the conclusion that it was more negative than what we wanted.
Yeah.
Even though I think it does have some resonance as a phrase.
It does. I think, though, like, I definitely think that this community is ending is a phrase that people often say, especially in New York, like people that have been here a long time, where they're sort of, I mean, I don't think they say that specific phrase, but they say that idea. And it actually just kind of is such a bummer.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like what, a lot of people have been saying it about New York right now. Like, New York's over, New York's dead. This community is ending. And it's just not true.
Yeah.
Like, if that's your attitude, then that's your attitude, but it's not like that's just your attitude.
Yeah.
And we realized, like, I don't want that on a shirt.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
Community of Edges, it has a similar feeling. Like, there's still a negative quality, but there's also, it's kind of unclear to me what exactly it means. Like, when I wear it, I think it's not saying that it's not a community of walls, right? Like, people can come in. It might mean that everybody has their elbows out. Like, that would be a community of edges. Like, we're all tough guys or something. But it could also mean that there's like a protection, like like there's some sort of like boundary that will hold you in place, or like there's something to sharpen your community.
mm-hmm.
And I think there's a lot more ways to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say everything that I've ever thought about it yet, because I also want to give people an opportunity to think about what these phrases mean for themselves.
Right. Yeah. I think of edges, a community of edges, in a like celebratory, like community of misfits type way. People that have chips on their shoulder. I think of edge and a chip, and but also people that are maybe feisty, willing to fight, people that have principles, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think that the design itself is pretty strong.
I
I
do
mean,
too.
obviously, I'd hope that we'd be putting out something that we think has a strong design, but the X shape with from a distance, you're not entirely clear that it actually is a phrase until you get closer.
Yeah. And that's actually true of both designs. I think that we did that on purpose with this particular set, is that they look visually appealing, like they could just be an abstract shape.
Yes.
And then when you get closer, you realize it actually says something.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that would pivot us to The Community is Endless, the one that's on my sweatshirt, which is shaped like a city skyline and reflects the journey that we are taking, which is to say that we are, as a city, made up of 100+ neighborhoods, but ultimately it is very clear when you're walking around that the lines blur
Mm-hmm.
to the point where the community has no boundaries.
Mm-hmm. And I think about it even in terms of more specific communities, I think it could apply to too. We spent September staying in Staten Island at a community that has been around since the 70s and may very well be endless.
Mm-hmm.
It's still going, and people are coming and going, and it's not the same, but it continues. And New York could be a community that's endless. And even, in a couple weeks, we're going to be walking along Music of Manhattan, and there's these songs that are written about specific places that bring people in, and it might be people that are living across the world, but they become part of the community just by listening to that song, and that can happen forever. So I think there's a lot of ways to think about both of these.
Yeah. And we have intended it to be made in such a way that people put their own spin on what the meaning is.
Yeah.
So the design might be something that appeals to you more, the words might be something that appeals to you more. We want people to make decisions for their clothes that are more informed and involved than what they're used to with typical just do it Nike shirts or joke shirts, things like that. So, yeah.